Hey, well, what's up, everyone? Welcome to The Collision. Daniel here to talk about a really interesting new film that's releasing soon from through Fathom Events, Irena's Vow. I have seen it, so let's talk about it. So there's a really great quote in this movie spoken by the main character, Irena, where she says, "What does it matter who we are? What we do is who we are." And she definitely walked the walk as well as talked the talk, because this is a historical film about a woman named Irena Gut, who was a Polish nurse who lived kind of during the horrors of German occupation in World War II. And kind of based on that remarkable real life story, Irena's Vow, which is a film adaptation of a Broadway play of the same name, does showcase her heroic deeds, her sacrifices that she went through in order to try and save the lives of 12 Jews that she sheltered in her house. And this movie is just really good. Sort of like equal parts like sobering and also inspiring. This is just an incredible story of faith and moral courage. And at least to me, this is one of the more powerful films that I've seen this year. And obviously, stories set against the historical backdrop of World War II are plentiful. Even just like in the last couple months, there have been several other kind of notable tales told of heroic people that are sheltering, Jews from the Nazi regime. But even despite sort of that we have a lot of stories kind of like this, there just seems to be something that's a little bit more unique about this film in telling the story from the perspective of a very ordinary kind of young woman. Because this movie is less a film about history as much as it is just a powerful testimony about the impact that one faithful life can make. I'll say too that despite the fact that the poster for this movie almost looks like something that you would expect from like a Christian romance novel or something, this film is at times quite difficult to watch, and intentionally so, because this movie is rated R, and it does feature at least one kind of particularly shocking moment of violence, which we'll get into in the content section. Very much like the evil that is on display is appropriately displayed and shown to be evil, which just gives kind of more urgency, kind of more context to the sacrifices that Irena had to make. I should mention too that I actually had the opportunity to chat with Dan Gordon, who was the writer of the original play, as well as the screenwriter who adapted it for film, as well as Jeannie Updike Smith, who is the daughter of the real life Irena, and just sort of hear more about kind of the true story, which really, despite all that she goes through in the film itself, it really does just offer like a partial glimpse of the full horrors that that she experienced. So I do recommend checking out those interviews. But as far as the film, I will say that nothing necessarily like pops or stands out or really blows you away, but sort of the craftsmanship of this film does provide a very, I think, suitable vehicle to tell this very powerful and inspiring story. Because actress Sophie Nelise, who I'm unfamiliar with, I know she's I think most known for her role in the TV show Yellow Jackets. She's great in the lead role as Irena, kind of embodies both sort of the unwavering moral strength of the character, and also just the fear and sort of the vulnerability and just kind of the harbored pain and hurt. And I think this film also, it was filmed like on location in Poland, which does give a bit more of like a tactile, authentic kind of feel to the set design. And the cinematography too, I think it's well done. There is enough like camera movement and kind of framing to keep it interesting, even if it doesn't necessarily, stand out or impress, the way that a film like Cabrini did earlier this year. But kind of overall, I think everything is very competently kind of made without ever getting in the way or distracting from really its most important quality, which is the story. And what I liked most about this film, I think, is that it's a powerful film where the emotion never feels like cheap or manipulative. I think it does strike a very delicate balance of being inspiring, but never being like sentimental, or kind of being raw and honest, sometimes shockingly so, without ever feeling gratuitous or over the top. And even just being a very entertaining film, there's high tension scenes of hiding in the house and trying to keep cover. So it definitely is still a movie that you can enjoy, but it also treats the subject with an appropriate amount of like kind of gravitas and seriousness that these events deserve. And even when we'll get into a bit more in just a second, but this film has a very almost like a subtext of a very strong pro-life message, but it's able to kind of deliver that without ever devolving into a very kind of heavy-handed sermon. In the real life, Irena was a woman of very strong faith, and this film does not shy away from that, foundational aspect of her character. I think the film does share some similarities to Cabrini, which I mentioned earlier, in that while both those women were, women of faith, kind of their religious core foundation convictions is most evidently displayed through, just their actions and through, their love of other people. Although you do see Irene praying and, attending church, and even her vow, which gives the movie its title, is one that she makes with God to never sort of stand back passively if she has the power to save even just one life. As far as content to consider, things going on the surface of this, there's not a whole lot, although there is enough to make this an R-rated film. Language, there's no profanity that I caught. The only language that I stood out was a woman is called a whore multiple times. Violence is where there is the most, because like I said, there is a pretty disturbing kind of violent scene in which a man rips an infant from the arms of its mother and throws it on the ground and proceeds to like violently stomp, and you hear the wet crunch, and then from there shoots the mother in the head, and you see sort of splatters of blood, which becomes a very pivotal moment in the story. And obviously it's an unsettling scene, and it's supposed to be, it's a very much sort of that moment's the catalyst for Irena's journey. Personally, I felt that it was disturbing, it was shocking, but I don't think it was inappropriate or gratuitous, because it did serve sort of, a very important story function in Irene's journey. Kind of the other violent moment is there's another scene where a group of people are hanged to death, and in that group there are multiple children, and you do sort of see them falling and kind of, hanging from the noose. As far as sexuality, there's some stuff here too, although most of it is either implied or else it occurs off screen, because there is a woman who is sexually abused and raped, although the actual sexual acts don't occur in camera, because the man is shown kind of forcefully kissing this woman and kind of grasping at her clothes, and then the next time you see them, they're both in bed together. And kind of another scene, there is characters remark that a man has had his hand up the skirt of a woman all night at this party, and then those two characters kind of go off from the party outside to continue playing around, and you hear sort of the giggling, and eventually when you see them again, they're sort of fashioning their clothes back together. As far as themes, kind of things going on beneath the surface of this, I think the main, most apparent one is just confronting evil, kind of moral courage, because like in the aftermath of that shocking moment of violence against the baby and the mother, Irena is very rattled, and she says, "I have seen things that I shouldn't, terrible things, horrible things." And kind of in response to that, an older man remarks, "Don't tell me, I do not want to know." And it's not that this other man doesn't care or he's not aware of sort of, the plight happening around him. It's just that he does not have yet kind of like the moral courage to kind of open his eyes and confront it. Instead, he very much counsels Irena to just keep her eyes focused downward on her shoes and just focus on kind of taking one step at a time. But having seen those horrors with her own eyes, Irena is convicted to and kind of driven to act, kind of to make this vow with God that she won't just sort of turn a blind eye to what's happening, but that whatever she can do, to save even one life, she will do that. And kind of in that way, I think sort of, that the violence that is depicted in this movie itself becomes sort of a continuation of this theme, that sort of you can't confront evil unless you first sort of acknowledge it and open your eyes to just sort of, the naked, horrible truth of that evil. And just another theme, like I said, there is a very strong, like, pro-life message in this film. obviously hiding in a house with someone that is trying to kill you is not the ideal environment to raise a newborn baby. When some of these Jews that she's been protecting, when one of the ladies does become pregnant, kind of collectively they all seem to agree that the only feasible way forward is to have an abortion, and they want Irena to get them the medical materials that they would need in order to carry that out. But kind of after what Irena has experienced and seen the death of that innocent baby earlier in the film, she's just unwilling to do it. She does cite her religious kind of her religious beliefs, but even kind of beyond just her religion, just she does frame it very much as a serious matter of life or death. She says we have to live, otherwise the Hitlers of the world have won. And she's just unwilling to witness like the death of another Jewish baby, which very implicitly attributes sort of dignity and life to the life that's in the womb as well as sort of outside of the womb. And really the theme is kept off at the end of this film, kind of right before the credits. There's various kind of video clips and pictures of sort of what happened to these characters after the events of the movie. And you do see videos of this child that was almost aborted, as an adult, a happy, adult interacting with Irene, which just becomes a very powerful sort of celebration on the value of life. So in the end, I think Irena's Vow may not wow audiences kind of with any one single characteristic. I do think it possesses something that very often seems to be lacking in Hollywood these days, and that's just a story worth telling. This is an inspirational story. It is a powerful story. It can be a difficult story to watch, but ultimately one that does show just the power of a faithful woman who's sustained by God and kind of convicted by God to just to demonstrate kind of heroism and courage to love on those and save those around them. So this is a film that I would recommend seeing. And this film may be, on the surface a historical drama, but I do think sort of the message of it and kind of the example remains as relevant and needed today as ever. But hey, would love to hear what you guys think if you do check this out. I think this is going to be a film that's released through Fathom Events, sort of a limited theatrical release, and then it will be available later on streaming. So not necessarily a wide theatrical release, but however you're able to see this film, I do think that it is a story that is worth experiencing and seeing. So if you do see it, love to hear what you thought. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, or had any questions or other thoughts, jump into the comment section. Let's have a conversation about that. If you haven't done so too, encourage you guys, subscribe to our channel, become a Collider. Lots of other movie reviews and interviews and a podcast and just other fun stuff. Would love to have you be a part of that. But most of all, guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.